You know you're being manipulated. You know when you're being played. You know when somebody wants something from you and they are being charming or exploitative, or they get angry, or they're being seductive. There are many, many ways that people will manipulate you. And if you're with a hijackal, one of those toxic, difficult, and often disturbing people, then they are going to do that, and you know that. But you have to be able to recognize the signs. So I'm going to give you some signs today that you are being manipulated, things to watch for, and then I'm going to give you some ways to make it stop. So I hope that will be really helpful for you today. Because you don't want to think of yourself as being manipulated, do you? I mean, you don't want to believe it. You want to believe in the goodness of people, and generally you can. But sometimes, and if you've had this experience, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes you are being seduced, exploited, manipulated, and totally discounted in the process. And that's when you have to wake up and smell the herbal tea. Want more support? Subscribe to Tips for Relationships at forrelationshiphelp.com/subscribe now. People who must manipulate others only know how to survive by having power and control over other people. So depending on which study you read, that's 9.1 to 15% of Americans. So it's true, and you're going to meet at least one. Unfortunately, if they're in your family, you're going to meet more than one. So if you don't notice you're being manipulated, you're being set up to attract more. And you know, I call these master manipulators hijackals. They hijack relationships for their own purposes, and then they scavenge them for power and control. And some are about as subtle as a train wreck. Others are quieter, systematically wearing and tearing you down in small, nasty, underhanded ways. You want to believe that if you're only kinder or more compassionate or more understanding or more patient or less demanding, they will change, right? No, they won't, because they can't. They have a need, a survival need to dominate. So let me give you a few signs that will clear up what you're looking for. So number one is that you realize you're uncomfortable around them. Your gut tells you, no, this is not good. I should avoid them. You duck when you see they're coming, or you beg off family events to sidestep a possible ambush. And when you do have to talk to them, you try to keep the conversation with them on very neutral ground. Okay, you know those ones. So number two, you feel annoyed, resentful, and kind of bad when you have a conversation with them. Can't quite put your finger on it, but for example, you can't avoid talking with them, so you attempt to agree with them. And as soon as you do, they do an about face and tell you why you're wrong. And that's just a big hijackal gotcha. Sound familiar? Here's another. You feel demeaned, degraded, and maybe in need of a shower when they walk away from an encounter with you. No matter how you duck or weave or bob, they find a way to make you wrong. And then they point out that everything is your fault. They must be right. You know that they're not right, but you're tempted to believe them anyway. Well, it's easier, isn't it? Here's another. You second guess yourself whenever you're around them. You're kind of saying inside, could I be mistaken? Is it me? I don't see things clearly. What am I thinking? And they like that because they can make you believe anything is your fault. Manipulating your self-esteem and self-confidence is a big part of the way they roll. And you give them power over you in that moment, and they love it. They relish that. That's lip-smacking good to them. They like that. And you are then giving them unintentionally some power, but the subtlety of their manipulation, gotcha again. Here's another. You find yourself rationalizing, justifying, and making excuses for the things that they do, even when you're really stretching to do that. You're uncomfortable, but you're not willing to confront the behaviors. Maybe you're in denial. Seeing what was really going on, it would mean that you would be responsible for taking action. And you're not willing to do that. Or maybe you're not ready to do that. Maybe you don't even know where to start. So you're anxious and you're not sure what's keeping you on edge. And these difficult people get under your skin and irritate you even when you're not around them. In fact, it can last even after they've died, especially if he or she was your parent. Long-lasting effects. So how do you make them stop? Well, that's not so simple, because you have very little control over another person. Fortunately, though, you have ultimate control over yourself, so start there. Uh-oh, that may not have been what you wanted to hear. You'd prefer a quick fix, right? A way to change the other person? Unfortunately, that's a non-starter. So the first thing you can do is acknowledge you can't do anything to change that other person. So, as I mentioned earlier, much of what you're saying to yourself might have sounded like, if only I were more patient or loving or kind or compassionate and understanding, then he or she would change. Or, I just have to try to ask for less or complain less or nag less or expect less and everything will be good. But no, nothing changes because you cannot change another person. It's not possible. Another person can change if they see a need to change. And master manipulators, those hijackals, will sometimes change for a little while if you threaten to leave them. But they go right back to their puppeteering ways when the dust settles. You've noticed that, right? These toxic people have traits, patterns, and cycles that repeat. Start to observe their behaviors rather than feel victimized by them. Step out of your feelings. Get into your head. What do they want? Well, they want power over you. It's that simple. So either you're a help or a hindrance to getting their way. See that. And if they think you're in their way, watch out. Because manipulators don't care about you. They care about themselves and getting what they want. And they don't care what they have to do or say to get it. They'll lie and cheat and exploit and seduce or charm their prey to feed their power needs. Yes, see that clearly. That's why the work begins within you. A master manipulator is going to rob you of your self-confidence and cause you to doubt yourself. And if that person was your parent, you were robbed right from the cradle. So when you know that's in your background, start there. All your relationships will have been affected, of course, by this early conditioning. So when you really get that right down to your toes, you'll be excited and encouraged to move forward with more exploration. So let's talk about some steps you can take right now to stop the manipulation. First, big one, put this in big neon letters. Stop wanting their approval. Let me say it again. Stop wanting their approval. Because you, like everybody else on the planet, want your mother, father, partner, or boss to like you, maybe to love you, but certainly to approve of you. And a toxic mother believes she has the ultimate power over you when she withholds that approval. She doesn't really have love to give because she unfortunately was not given it, but she refuses to encourage you by telling you when you do things well. She may even give you a reason like my mom did. She'd say, I don't want you to get a swelled head. Well, how covert and backward is that? Once I realized that was the game and that I was hooked into playing it, guess what? I quit. And I advise you to do the same thing. So many things about my mother were difficult, nasty, rude, racist, mean. I didn't approve of her behavior even though I wanted her approval. So she withheld it, and hijackals do that. The biggest learning there for me was, Why would I want the approval of someone of whom I don't approve anyway? That was a big moment, and it was a giant step for me towards greater emotional well-being. So stop looking for the approval of people of whom you don't approve and may not even like. You may be afraid of them, I get that, and you still be looking for their approval, but as Bob Newhart said, stop that. So stop wanting their approval, and secondly, stop being addicted to their drama. Manipulators like to keep you uncertain. They are masters of ambiguity. They create chaos, and everyone else is always wrong and at fault. There's always going to be drama around toxic people because they're constantly creating it. So they love to tell the ain't it awful and he or she done me wrong stories. And sometimes when it suits their desired result, they are the victim. And other times they tell a story where they're the all-knowing perpetrator, and other times the savior of the situations, but they want to keep you catering to their drama. So toxic people, they set you up to fail with other people. Like I said, they're manipulators, they're puppeteers. They pull strings behind the scenes to set up further drama. They talk to people behind your back and they tell stories that aren't true and they stir things up. Why? So they can be in the center of it. That's their play. So don't listen to them anymore. Don't get sucked into their view of things. Just notice, just observe. Be disinterested in their stories. Respond with neutral kind of remarks like, oh, that's interesting, or, oh, love it, love to listen, but I have to run. That's your right. You need to exercise it. So stop wanting their approval. Stop being addicted to their drama, and stop living up to their expectations. Manipulators count on you wanting them to like you. Or at least they count on you wanting to please them. And that's a setup right there. So if your parent was manipulative, she or he taught you that there was danger in not paying attention to their whims and suggestions and demands. So you learned to be hypervigilant so you wouldn't land on the wrong side and the wrong end of their anger. You were little, and you knew you needed to be taken care of. So you learn to dance to their tune to survive. You don't have to do that anymore. You're an adult. These toxic people, these hijackals, they choose you because they think you can be manipulated. Of course, there's always those that like a challenge, so they'll choose a strong person and look for their vulnerabilities to exploit. All this manipulation is nasty stuff. No matter how attractive the package looks on the outside, once you see the tricks, I hope the attraction fades quickly. So no matter whether you were raised in a toxic environment or you find yourself in situations where you dread seeing particular people, know that you are not in this world to live up to the expectations of others once you are an adult. Healthy people live up to their own expectations of themselves. And here is the big one. Stop letting your boundaries slip. Yes, if you were raised by toxic people, your boundaries are likely in need of strengthening. And you'll have to practice. You don't like it when they walk all over you, but maybe you haven't made a strong stand for yourself. So it's time to do that. So a couple of ideas. If you're new at expressing boundaries, simply say, I do not feel comfortable or respected or safe when I am experiencing this. What works for me is this. And don't talk about the person, just speak about the behavior. That's a great start. Because healthy people have healthy boundaries. And that means they can speak up and say what's okay and what's not. Healthy people expect to be respected. And when their boundaries are repeatedly walked over, they distance themselves from the person. They have that right, and you do too. So boundaries expressed let people know who you are, what you want, and how you feel when certain things happen. And if you let them slip, It's easy to do, I know, you'll have to practice. But if you let them slip, you're telling someone that what you want doesn't matter. That's not true, right? That's why it's so important to know your own boundaries. There will always be people who want to control you. Remember, 9 to 15% of Americans. In fact, 10% of people will always give it a try. So whether or not they're successful manipulating you into giving them power over you is entirely up to you. So see the signs I've been talking about today and take those actions to make it stop. You're not here to live up to the expectations of other people now that you're an adult. So take your place. Learn to be assertive. Give yourself permission to be assertive. Folks who need power over you do not love or respect you. If they did, they would be equally as interested in you as you are in them. Mutuality is the hallmark of a healthy relationship, as I said in my book, Kaizen for Couples. And it's so important for you to know these things. So now, I hope all these things sit well with you. Now stop, look, and listen, just like your mother told you when you were little. Stop, look, and listen. After hearing this, if you now realize that that anxious dread you feel whenever that person, that toxic person, is near, is arising from the fear of manipulation, when you recognize that, you're on your way to freedom. I know it's not easy, but it's doable, and I really hope you'll do it starting right now. Make sense? Great. Talk soon. I'm so glad you spent this time with me today. I hope you heard something that touched your heart and empowered you to move forward. You can have the life and relationships that you most want, and that begins with you, within you, today. I'm always here for you. Life can get better, and you heard that from me, the Relationship Help Doctor. I'm Roberta Shaler, and I work with clients throughout the world through video conferencing. We can talk. So learn more at forrelationshiphelp.com, forrelationshiphelp.com, or visit me on YouTube at For Relationship Help. Join me for next week's show.